Okay, so we're live. Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to the second episode of Global Citizen. My name is Calvin. I'm the host of the show. So for our guest for today is actually Mr. Anfernee Chansamooth. Yeah, am I saying your name correctly, Anfernee?
You got it right, Calvin.
All right. To our dear audience here, I've actually put your description in the box. However, yeah, maybe you want to share a bit more of yourself.
Sure. Basically, I work as a content strategist, copywriter, and communications consultant. And I'm basically working with small businesses, typically who are running remote teams. So they're basically building remote teams. They operate online, and their staff are usually digital nomads or people who are based, all over the country or in different places around the world. So one of those clients, for example, is a online bookkeeping service, and they have 15 staff, but there's no one office. The team is distributed across many continents, and I run their marketing and help them with generating marketing for that particular service. So that's what I do. And Founders Connect is I'm the co-founder. My other co-founder is actually my wife, and we basically are building a service and also a community around people like us, remote entrepreneurs who like to travel, who also want help to grow their businesses or to launch their businesses, and need some help with either the marketing aspect or the communications aspect in terms of dealing with relationships with co-founders, or if they're married like we are, how to deal with how do you work with your partner and not kill each other. And so
Okay.
and we'll
I might make a second episode with you on that.
Oh, sure, happy to, man. And so
Yeah, maybe with your wife beside you this time. All right.
yeah,
So
exactly.
okay. So from the scale of 1 to 10, yeah, how would you say the importance of marketing is from the scale of 1 to 10?
For any business, I would say it's
Yeah,
9 or 10 because
fantastic.
you need to really be able to communicate what you do and who you do it for. And if you're not marketing or selling what you do, then you can't expect to get consistent clients or income or the impact that you're trying to create.
Okay, I'm glad you actually gave a 9 out of 10, or if you want to, you can even go above that. The reason being is this. I once worked for a sales company that somehow still believe in the importance of cold calling and, well, more of the traditional style of marketing. In fact, the company still utilize a roadshow system, and I have no idea why it's still doing that. I survived in that company for almost a year. So hallelujah, I survived on that. So okay. So the what you're doing now is, in a way, it is a dream for the current era, especially, well, my generation, the millennial generation, because, well, we don't like to go to the office. In fact, I'm doing my broadcasting here is in a co-working space, which
Yes.
is not even, yeah, it's not even mine. However, I just paid for my daily pass, and then I can just set up my stuff, and hallelujah, I can start my work here. So okay, so with regards to this, yeah, I believe you mentioned you went nomadic also for around
Yeah.
18 months or so.
Correct. So after my wife and I got married, we spent a couple of months in Sydney, and then we decided that we would go. My business was in a place that I could run it from my laptop, and so we could actually go and build the business in different places. So we actually started off in Malaysia, in Penang, and then we stayed there for a month. Then we went to Taipei for a month. Then we went to where do we go? Different places. I'm trying to remember them all. Japan, and then eventually ended up in Canada for 4 months in Montreal, and basically spent Toronto for a week because I used to live in Toronto. I lived in Toronto for 3 years, and also we climbed like the last New Year's, not the most recent January, but the previous January, 2018. We started the year by climbing Mount Bromo and Mount Ijen in Indonesia, in Java, and so yeah.
I've never even been to that, and I'm in
Really.
Indonesia.
It's an amazing, incredible place. Yeah, man, like highly recommend it.
Okay,
Totally nomad.
so sure. Okay, well, the thing is, one I'm curious about is this. Well, in a traditional Asian kind of settings, yeah, typically this kind of works, even though it is a dream of a lot of people, might not have the initiative or, where I say, the guts to even do it actually. So, from your experience, not only from working in the digital marketing itself, but because you travel around to actually do your work, right? You are practically living out of, as long as you got a Wi-Fi, you got a laptop, everything is done, right? So,
Yes.
what would you encourage? How would you encourage somebody to actually do it? Actually,
Yeah. So there's a few things that we learned in the process. Okay. So it may sound simple, and you can say, "Oh, I got a laptop and I got Wi-Fi, and it's easy." I would say that's actually not the case. I think that's one part of the equation. There's actually a lot of time spent on logistics. So Cindy, my wife, she spent a lot of time just looking for places we could live. You know, whether it's Airbnb or whatever it may be. We looked for co-working spaces, cafes with Wi-Fi. There's a lot of you need to
sure.
understand when you, and then then there's the whole visa thing. Like, how do you deal with visas
Yeah,
from going from one country to another? That's probably the biggest challenge for a lot of digital nomads is how to deal with visas, because depending on where your origin country is, it really depends where you can go with the visa. I know some people, they cannot even leave. They cannot go to some countries because if they have a a Vietnamese visa or something, or a
yeah,
Chinese
sure.
visa, right? So a couple of things that we definitely learned from the experience was you need to plan. As much as we the way we did it was we were quite spontaneous. So we just knew we're going to start in
Wow.
one country and one city, and then we would try and work our way around to different places. And what we learned was that's a very expensive way to do it. The better that
Yeah,
you
I was
plan.
waiting for that. Thank you for the honesty.
Yeah, the better you plan, you can do better things like save money on flights or your accommodation. Or because if you book, for example, if you're going to stay in Airbnb, if you book a month in advance or a few months in advance, you get a higher discount, right? Flights are the same. The further out that you book your flights, the better deals you're going to get, and you
Ah,
can save money, right? So there are a couple of things you need to think of logistically. You also need to think about your clients and where they're based, right? A lot of our clients were in Australia, and we also have some clients in the US. And so when you're in transition and you're moving, every month we were moving to a new city, that can cause problems with like meetings that you might have with your clients. You may cause problems with time zones, right? So you have to take that into consideration, and it
yeah,
depends
it
on.
is true. Because
Mm,
when I was actually looking through your software and when I was trying to book your timing, I was like, the earliest one was, just for the general knowledge of the viewers. Yeah, the interview was actually supposed to be done on Sunday, and however, when I was looking through the time, it's like, goodness gracious, it's at 4:30 a.m. on the US timing. So I'm like, okay, I am not waking up at 4:30 a.m. So okay, I'm sorry, but I have to push my
absolutely.
interview so to
Yeah.
today. Yeah, that's actually quite interesting, because when it comes to time zone, it's always been an issue. Because, well, like for example in Spain, they have something called the siesta
Siesta.
time. Yeah, whereby you will drag the timing, and then they will start doing the work on in the evening, right?
Mm,
And in Indonesia, in fact, like maybe on Friday, people consider it an impromptu break already, is because people need to go for their religion. So, oh, sorry, they have to go to the mosque. So by the
yes.
time they are back, it's like around 2 to 3 p.m., and by then nobody will be working anymore. So that is really interesting actually for that. Yeah. Okay. So for one thing is that marketing doesn't have a specific way of doing it, right? However, in the era of digital marketing, it is of the utmost importance. So there are countries which might believe in different customs and different approach on how they sell. If, let's say, you have a chance to barge into a CEO's office in any other countries, okay, that might have a different kind of ethics or different kind of upbringing compared to what you are doing,
Yes.
how would you do it?
So this is a good question, and I actually, when we were in Kuala Lumpur for a week, and I actually went I meet a co-working owner in KL, and this question actually came up because when you do marketing, you have to. Rule number one is you have to understand the target audience and their culture and the location, their traditions, and how they engage. Right, you need to understand how are sales typically done. Right, the sales process. For example, if you're in a culture that requires a lot of face-to-face meeting or a lot of handshakes, having drinks together, like in Japan,
Yeah,
that's very big
yeah, Japan does
in the
that a lot.
culture. Yeah, so you need to respect that, and you need to understand. Okay, if you're going to market to that particular culture, what are the best ways to go about that? And you need to customize. So you may have a general broad marketing strategy for digital, right? But you do need to customize language and delivery to the specific location or culture that you're dealing with. So I wish I could give you like here's how to do it in Malaysia and here's how to do it. Like it's really different, and also
Yeah,
depends on what companies you're dealing with too, because even within companies they have their own cultures and how they do business. So it's very important. The main rule in all marketing is speak to your potential buyers and really understand how do they prefer to engage, right? Some of them like doing meetings like
absolutely.
this over Zoom or whatever it may be. All right, some of them will say, look, do you have a representative here in Kuala Lumpur that you can send to have a meeting face to face, right? And so you have to work out for your business what is the best way for you, but also for your clients. Like for us and what we do, we can't work with customers who require the face-to-face interaction because we are nomadic, right? So
Yeah,
if that's their requirement, we would say thank you, but we're probably better off referring you to someone else who can handle that and can help you. But we're not the best people for that, and that's another rule in marketing: is you have to say no sometimes. You can't say yes to everybody.
yeah. Okay, I'm glad to actually hear you actually are honest about that because I believe in the interpretation of maybe the traditional form of marketing is that you never say no to anyone. Is that because at the end of the day there's always money at the end of
Yes.
the road. However, the focus now on the actually in the fourth generation of marketing here is because now you can't just have the mindset is this is business, this is just for money. It's because well, like for a millennial generation, one of the better way to motivate them is of course purpose, and for your case is that now you actually deliver a quality customer service because you're not you're not just trying to bull everybody here. It's like if I can't do it, I will refer it to somebody who can do it better for me. But so I really appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, it's a
Okay,
tough. If I could add to that, Calvin, it's a tough situation when you're starting out because you do need to obviously make money. You need to, create some kind of profit in your business or consistent
absolutely,
cash
absolutely.
flow, right? So, I mean, when we started, some of the clients that we took were not the best clients. They were not ideal for us, right? But we need
Yeah,
to build our portfolio, if you will, or the proof that we could do what we were saying we were doing, and we needed real case studies of that, right? And the only way we could do that was to
absolutely.
start with some clients. But then when you can get to a point where your income is at a good point, where it is every month you're getting a good consistent income, and then you can then start filtering, and you can say, well, now we can only work with specific clients, right? And that's something that's very important.
Okay. Okay, so for the benefit of the people who just tune in for my show, so the Global Citizen is actually created from my own experience growing up in another country because I'm actually an Indonesian. I'm a Chinese Indonesian, but I grew up in Singapore, and well, I've lived there for 15 years of my life, so it's pretty much more of my home, I guess, as compared to my own birth country. Okay. The thing is that when we are grow away, or even when we are living in another country, we experience different kind of custom, different style of approach to how we how we approach to something. Yeah, maybe some people could be like, you need to be directly tell them, hey, we can't do this,
Mm.
or some people you need to find a way to go about it other way, right? So you mentioned that you grew up for 14 years in Canada. Yeah.
No, I grew up in Sydney. So I was born in Laos.
Okay.
My
Sure.
family are from Laos originally, and we came when I was one. Our family moved to Australia. So I grew up and learned. I studied
Oh,
here, got all my certifications and things here, my career, and then I moved to Canada in 2013. So I moved to Canada for 4 years. Oh, sorry, 3 years,
oh,
and then I moved to
okay.
Laos. I lived in Laos for 18 months before coming back to Australia.
Okay. So in a sense, you are a third culture kid, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, I'm gonna ask you something that You will typically hear, but no matter how many times you hear it, you're gonna get really annoyed. Which is home for you?
Yeah, tough question. But I feel to me the answer is more Sydney now.
Sydney, right?
Yeah, it has changed. When I was living in Canada, for that time, Canada was home for me, and now it's. I feel because my family's here, my nephews, and a lot of obviously my friends. I went to school here, so a lot of positive moments in my life is basically grounded here. Having said that, though, when I went to Laos in for the first time in 2015, I went for the first time back to my country of birth.
Yeah,
That I did feel this moment of, like what you say, is I felt I was home, but it was
yeah,
just innate sense of yes, I understand the culture. It's already like I grew up with that, at home. My parents, my relatives, and our customs, and those things. And when I was living in Laos for 18 months and volunteering, I was basically teaching English and computer studies at a school, a high school there. It really reminded me, yeah, like I feel this place is a part of me, even though I never lived there
sure.
before. And
Yeah,
so yeah, it's a hard one to answer that question, but I feel most days would
yeah.
be Sydney.
Don't worry. Every single TCK will tell you is I don't know. As long as we live on Earth, I guess this
Yeah.
is our home.
For
Yeah, that
now,
is
yeah,
the why the name of the show's title is Global Citizens,
absolutely. Yeah,
because we don't know where we belong.
yeah.
Okay. Okay. So here's something I always ask all my guests for my channel is that there's one question I will definitely ask for them. It's because even though everybody is doing something, you guys well, at the end of the day, this is called global citizen. So a lot of what I do actually has based on something called Hofstede cultural dimension. If you ever heard of it, I've actually put it in the description box also. So Hofstede has six cultural dimension that actually highlighted the difference between citizens of other countries. So that you can actually find it in a website whereby you actually compare it to them. Interestingly, when I was trying to find out about Laos, it's that well, they didn't appear.
Hmm.
I can't find it. I don't understand why. So the closest that I actually can find of those within a Lao descended is actually in Thailand.
Yes.
So yeah, when I was looking through it, I found out that the lifestyle in Laos, the in sorry, in those within the Lao descended and people in Australia is contrastingly different. Like for example, in one of the graph, I believe that Australian has been considered highly individualistic, whereas in Lao descended can be highly collectivist. I think there's only
Correct.
two
Correct.
area that's quite common. So for one thing is that you grow up in Australia, so it's easy for you to adapt to the culture because you're doing it when you are young, right?
Hmm.
However, when you move out with your parents, was it easy for them? And also is like, how was your upbringing at home? Actually, it's because, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
sorry,
No, it's a great question, Calvin. And I can tell you the first like 12 or 14 years of my life was very confusing. And only because at school I would go and I would learn how to be an Aussie. I would speak, Australian English. Obviously, all my friends
sure,
were, even though they were similar to me in the sense that they were Asian kids, but they were growing up in Australia. So we would have this situation where it's like then when I went home, the food that I was eating, the language they were speaking, were Lao language. So I remember going into high school, like grade 7, and I wrote a poem because I used to write poems back then, and it was about what I could, what we call now, the third culture, but I actually wrote something about, well, who am I? Like, am I Australian or am I Lao? Because
yeah,
I don't know. I don't know. And when an Australian looks at me, they see Asian skin. So to them, I'm an Asian. When a Lao person looks at me and listens to me talk, I don't speak like a Lao person. So and I'm dressed like an
oh
Australian.
god,
So it's a bit of a, yeah. When I went back to Laos for the first time, I mentioned that a lot of local Lao people were shocked that I could speak the language because they were like, "Wait a minute, you're a giant. I'm 6'1" if you can't tell by the screen, but
yeah,
I'm tall. Like in my family, I'm the tallest in my family, and they just didn't
lucky you.
understand. Yeah, so
I'm 5'7",
well,
so
that's still pretty tall.
it's considered average, I guess, and I am considered one of the tallest in my family. But yeah,
Yeah,
lucky
yeah,
you, 6'1".
yeah. So it's a good question, and definitely like it's so now in terms of my parents, was it easy for them to adapt? I think it would have been very challenging. Like I don't have I was just a baby at then, so I don't remember what happened. But for them, just like learning the language, when they came over here, they were probably 30 by then. So for them to pick up a language when
Yeah,
you're 30 is quite challenging. And then you've got all the customs are different. You don't when you're buying food, you don't just walk to the street and buy the vegetables off the street. You have to go to this thing called a supermarket. What is that?
yeah,
And
and there
yeah,
was a joke that actually says that every Asian kid's like in a meme that you will say all kinds of stuff whereby that is used to cane you, and then
yes,
it's like they'll be asking you is that if you have never been caned. Ironically, is that I've never gotten that since I was a kid.
yes,
So when
absolutely.
I was looking at it, it's like, okay, this stuff is weird. But if you ask some of my friends, is that to them is like this thing is like an equivalent to a childhood game or something. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean in Australia, I don't believe that this kind of thing is something that is done. However, it is there. However, in an Asian household, this is something that's pretty common. Yeah.
Yes, for sure.
So yeah, the different style of upbringing does actually affect your mindset and how you approach stuff. So, in terms of your niche in your industry as a digital marketer, yeah,
Yes.
and a content creator, I'm sorry, you have so many titles. I will just use the
Let's
ones
stick with
that I
content
feel
creator.
has
That's
always
fine.
been. Yeah. Okay. With regards to this, right? What kind of mindset should somebody develop for in order to explore this area? Because uh, when you're doing something as a digital nomad, you don't have the typical come to work, get out of work, go, you get a salary at the end of the month. It's a different mindset. So, what would you suggest somebody to adapt in order for them to actually start doing this?
Okay, so there are a couple of there are a few mindsets I would suggest that anyone starting out in this journey to adopt or adapt. The first one is in any business, if you're whether it's freelancing or you're starting a team, you want to build to a team of 10. Like at one point I had 8 staff or contractors working with my business. You need to understand, first of all, you need to pay yourself first, right? It's very
Sure.
important to establish what your monthly salary would be. So maybe if you were to go
Absolutely.
and work in a job, right, a 9 to 5 or whatever it is now, what are your monthly expenses? How much do you pay for your rent? How much do you pay for your food? If you're saving to go traveling or saving for whatever
Yeah.
to support your family, then calculate that out. You can use a simple spreadsheet and then work out, okay, well, how much money do I need to be making for me to survive? And then then you have to calculate your pricing based on that, right? So you put a margin on top of that, and then you say, okay, this is how much my service is going to cost. And this is something that it took me like 3 years to work that out, right? And for the first 2 years of my business life, I was not making any money. Okay, the business was
Oh,
making money, but the way I was taught was whatever you make as a profit, you should reinvest that into the business to grow the business. Okay. And what I've learned since then is that's actually a myth, because if you do that and you're not paying yourself, okay, and your personal finances are suffering, then it's very hard for you to be creative. It's very hard for you to be
survive
like
in the
great.
business. Yeah.
To do great, because you can't do great work when you are struggling at home. You get
Absolutely.
it? And if you want to, at the time when I was not married, I was single. All right, it's very hard to even like go out on dates with people and things like this, because you're just worried like I can't pay for that meal. You know
You
what I mean?
don't
Like
have
I'm
the.
being real. Like
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah.
reality. I've seen a lot of like
Yeah.
young people thinking, yeah, it looks cool, I want to be a nomad and this sort of stuff. It's like, yeah, but most people I've spoken to are struggling financially, and something that I now sort of say to a lot of people who want to do this is you should go, if you want to learn marketing or you want to be great at, I don't know, whatever thing that you're passionate about, you should go work for
Yeah.
a company that does that first. Okay. And basically get a job in that company, learn the skills, learn how the business operates, right? Talk to the CEOs
Absolutely.
and whoever it is. It's basically, think of it as a paid apprenticeship. So they're paying
Sure.
you to learn what they do, and then once you understand it and you can identify what the gaps are and what they're doing, you can then come out of it and then start your own thing. And it gives you a reality check, because I think if you go in jumping in blind, right, it's a lot of problems. And I see
Absolutely.
a lot of people quitting. They quit because they don't realize, oh shit, like it's really going to take me 4 years to make this work instead of the 6 months or 1 year that I think it's going to take. So you need to.
I think it's because you want to go in with a gung ho mentality, but the thing is that if you've never considered the proper logistics here,
Yes.
I mean, if you want to go in with a gung ho, that you can do it as a salesperson, because at the end of the day, your company is accountable to you. But when you're doing it at like the way you are doing now, you are an entrepreneur, so you have to consider the whole basis in general, instead of just, okay, I'm gonna go in with positivity and high ambition, yeah, and then suddenly you're gonna suffer at the end of the month.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. And
Let me ask you
that's
something,
what.
mate.
Yep.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Sorry. What is considered? Have you ever heard something that is a negative? What is considered a bad advice within your industry itself?
Well, I gave you one, which is around profit. Profit. You should focus on
Sure.
profit first. Another one I would say is, there is a difference between a freelancer and an entrepreneur. Okay, so freelancer
Sure.
is someone who is focused very much on a craft. So you might be good at digital
Yes.
marketing, you might be good at writing, you might be an artist, a graphic designer, whatever your skill set is, a developer. Okay. But if you are a practitioner and a freelancer, that means you are the business,
Yep.
right? You have to do the work.
Absolutely.
Right? An entrepreneur thinks
Yeah.
about team. They're thinking about, how do I actually manage other practitioners so that I basically focus on growing the business, right? And potentially one day maybe selling the business, okay? And then really developing systems and processes to allow themselves to free up time so they can focus on growth and building relationships and these sort of things, right? And that's something that I had to learn, because when I started off as a copywriter and I was doing all the writing myself for all my clients, okay? And it just got to a point where I could only take on, say, 6 clients at one time because my plate was full. I couldn't write anymore. I couldn't do any more calls. I couldn't do nothing. And so that became very stressful, and I couldn't take holidays, because if I took a holiday, my business would shut down. I would not make any money.
Yeah, that means, yep.
Right. So think about entrepreneur. And now another thing I'll add to this one is there is a good test you can do. It's a free test. You can Google it. It's called the Visionary and the Integrator test. It's from a book called Rocket Fuel. And
okay, cool.
Yeah, have you heard of this one, Calvin?
Not really, but this is the first time. That's why I learned everything new.
Oh, awesome. Okay. So
Okay.
So what that test does, it basically, when the person who did the research and who wrote the book basically examined a lot of the top companies, in the last 50 years, and what they found was most of the successful companies have two partners or 2 co-founders, right? There's rarely big companies that have one founder and that's it. There are some exceptions, but if you look at Apple, there was 2 guys, even though we know Steve Jobs, but Steve Wozniak was the other person who was involved. Microsoft, same thing. Everyone knows about Bill Gates, but there was actually another person in the background who was driving the business as well. And so there's always
Wozniak, right?
No, Wozniak was Apple. For Microsoft, it was someone else.
Oh, yeah.
I think it was Charlie May or something.
Oh, yeah.
And so for a lot of businesses, what you need one person who is a visionary. Okay, that person can see where the trends are happening in the market. They can see what the opportunities are, and they're focusing on what the competitors are doing, and they can see, okay, this is where we're going with the vision, and they can communicate that, right? So usually that person is strong at sales and marketing and strategy. And then you've got the second person, which is the integrator. And that person is the person who's very good at details. They're very good at project managing everything and looking at how does operations work, what tools, technology do we need, what people do we need to do certain things. And they basically build that, okay? And when you have those 2 different energies working together, then you have a higher chance of success, all right?
Absolutely.
And so that's something that's worth looking as well. And when you're thinking about, becoming a nomad, there's a reason why it's not just me, it's me and my wife. All right. So we both support each other. And there's other challenges with working with someone who you're married to, but we'll talk about that another time.
Yeah,
And
I'll
but
get a second
yeah.
episode with you on that, man.
But definitely take a look at
Uh,
that. And if I can give you one more resource, Calvin, I would recommend it's called the Wealth Dynamics test. Just Google
okay.
wealth dynamics, and that one is a really great test to work out what your specific strengths and weaknesses are. And it combines Eastern philosophy with Western science or psychology, right? So you probably heard of Myers-Briggs or
Yes.
some other Strengths Finder and some of these other tests that are out there. Those personality assessments. I think wealth dynamics is probably one of the best that I've come across because it actually helps you understand how not only who you are, but who are the people you need to surround yourself with to build wealth, right? And it's a
I've
really,
actually created
yeah.
a method to identify somebody's more a personal characteristic to suit their suitability in your
Oh, great.
organization or not, and that is done by using fried chicken.
I want to see
Yeah,
this.
I'll send you the link later. Yeah, it's actually called the SSW and SLW paradox, or you can call it the vice versa. They are named after the initials of both my sisters because
Yes.
both my sisters has a contrasting way and their personality fits with that particular style.
I love it.
So yeah, I'll forward you the link later for that.
Yeah, that's
Okay,
cool, man.
my last question is actually this: what three advices would you give to a young lady or young man who is now in a crossroad of their life? Maybe they had at point decided to actually do what you do, or maybe they are just graduated from university and now they want to explore a career. Maybe it might not be up to their passion. What three advice would you give to them actually?
Okay, the first one is definitely go and take the wealth dynamics test because
Yep.
that will, and also maybe Calvin's test as well, because I think that the
No,
first place.
my test is actually more towards when you are on field itself. Okay,
Okay, fair
because
enough.
from my experience as a salesman.
Yeah, all good, man, all good. So yeah, the first thing is really like finding yourself and understanding
Sure.
what you love to do, what you're great at, what you're curious about. I don't like to say find your passion because I think you can
Yeah,
get that can be a trap for a lot of people. It's like, oh, I haven't found my
absolutely,
passion, and it's like, oh, how it's very hard. But I think it's more about finding your curiosity and what you
absolutely,
know what interests you might have, right? And the wealth dynamics test will help you understand, you know like roles you should be in and roles you shouldn't be in based on like how you answer the questionnaire. Okay, so that's the
absolutely.
first one, like understand you. The second one would be to really if you want to go down the road of entrepreneurship, there's only one way to learn entrepreneurship, and that's to do it. Like you can read
Absolutely.
100 books, but until you actually launch something, until you actually speak to potential buyers, and you don't have a business until you've got a customer. If no one's paying you
Yeah.
anything, it's not a business. I don't care if you
Yeah.
post 1,000 Instagram images. I don't quote. That's not a business, right? Um,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
and I think people get caught in like, I want to be an Instagram influencer or I want to be whatever, and it's like that doesn't mean anything. I tell you, a lot of those people who are influencers and you see they have like 20,000 followers, they're making no money, right?
Yeah.
So you have to find a business is the intersection between a market desire or market need, right? Solving a specific problem for a
Absolutely.
specific group of people. And so you need to work out. And a good way to learn this skill is to actually do something like a startup weekend. I know there's some in like Singapore and Sydney has those. Look, Google startup weekend and go and do what's called either like an accelerator program or a weekend type program where you can actually
Yeah.
you join groups and you learn how to pitch, and you take an idea and then you spend a weekend trying to validate if that idea would make sense as a business.
Absolutely.
And it's really intense. I've done it a couple of times, and you learn how to collaborate. You learn how to work with different personalities. All right, the best experience you're going to get is real life experience. Okay, so that's number
Absolutely.
two.
I mean, the
Mm,
purpose, idea for this show is because from a last working experience I got, it's because my boss was actually British and he wanted to expand to Singapore. However, he didn't do any kind of proper research, and even if he did, I think that it's just something brief that is done by some analysts in order to just get the money.
yes,
And when the business was expanded, well, he doesn't know the proper custom. He doesn't even know the proper culture. In fact, when we started the business, it was in mid October, which by then practically everybody is on their way to go on the leave or they are preparing to end the work. It's because they are trying to settle the last year's work already. And well, by the time we started something, it's it was a disaster.
Yeah.
And the sad one was that I actually managed to get clients in the month of February, which is after Chinese New Year. So it's not that because the product doesn't work, it's because you don't try to understand the timing. So as a result, you go in head first, then in the end it went to kaput.
Wow. Lots of
Yeah.
learning in that experience. I can see that. So yeah,
Well, I guess it's because it's personally painful to myself since
yeah,
I was one of the first to start with the company. So I see it as a personal failure on my part. So that's how this idea, one of the idea to actually create this channel, so that you actually get an idea what it's like to live in other people's shoe.
yeah.
So like my first episode is actually a friend of mine, Mr. Jacques Ofalian. He's actually from Lebanon, which is located in the Middle East. When I actually told some of my friends who are living in the United States that, hey, I'll be creating a show, and my guest is actually from Middle East, everybody was assuming it's like things that you would be associated with terrorism.
Yes.
So I'm like, no, this guy is a really nice guy. He's a smart guy. He's an engineer. So that if you never know about it and you've never really heard somebody firsthand, then you might not know how to actually go about it. Oh, I'm sorry, Anthony. Just now you were mentioning your last advice
Oh no, so well,
for.
that's good. I like your story because it ties into my third tip anyway, which is you really
Oh,
need to broaden your horizons and step out of your comfort zone. So whatever it
absolutely,
is, and that could be, if you have the means to do it, you can travel to different places. It doesn't have to be outside of your country. It could be within your state. It could be whatever, right? Or you can do
absolutely,
it like what Calvin's doing now. Is you can actually start a channel or a platform or something like this and start interviewing people that are interesting to you, and learn about what they're doing, and uh, understand, like we say, how are they living, how are they building their careers, and seek mentors. Like I think that's a very
absolutely.
undervalued, I guess, process. And a lot of there's a reason why I have podcasts. Every time I bring a podcast, like a guest into my podcast, it's because I feel there's something I can learn from them.
Absolutely.
And you want to build relationships. This ties into like what you're also doing. You need to do is build your network, right? You want to. I use LinkedIn. That's my main tool for network building. I see you're using Facebook, and that's fine, right? But pick your platform.
I use everything actually.
Okay, cool,
My favorite
right?
method is always has to just attend a networking event.
Yeah, yeah. But you can do that. Like you can, and that's the thing. Whilst you're trying to work out what you're going to do next, right? Take the time to practice skills. Like this is, you're practicing how to host a webinar or a live interview. That's a great skill to learn, right?
Absolutely.
You want to learn, and I'll also add number one skill to learn is sales, right? Because if you cannot sell
Absolutely.
a vision or an idea, right, it's going to be very hard for you to even convince someone to give you a job, right? Like you need to really
Absolutely.
understand how to like work out what someone else needs and what they want, and then how you can deliver that for them.
Alright. Yes, that is actually true. Yeah, because the thing is that sales is important skills. It's because, well, if you don't have it, you pretty much will not get much customer. Of course, well, if you're somebody within the administrative area, you might not need it. It's because, well,
Well,
your area has more to do with logistic, but
but
of course, it's a really important skill to learn. Yep.
But let me
Sorry,
tell you
Anthony.
about that. Let me tell you about that person working in the admin area. If they do not learn how to sell and communicate with other people outside of their
Absolutely.
department or their managers or their
Absolutely.
directors, they're going to be passed up on opportunities because someone else is better at speaking,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
So you still need to learn that ability. You need to network. Even it might not be a direct sale, like a sales pitch, but it's going to be,
Yeah.
hey, this is why, at least
You need
I
to
know
talk.
you. Yeah, like you have to interact with them. People need to know who you are. And this happened to one of my clients. He was very good technical skills at what he did, right? But he was passed up
Absolutely.
on promotions because none of the directors in the company knew who he was, right? And because he didn't go and
Absolutely.
have coffee
Absolutely.
meetings with them or tea or whatever. Like this is important, man. Like this is like how to build your network.
Absolutely. Okay. Okay. Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry. I kind of overshot the timings I promised you. Thanks so
That's
much
okay.
for doing that. All right. I think I'm done with many questions. Maybe Anthony, you have anything you want to say to the people of the internet here, on who are watching here?
Sure. Basically, I am. We mentioned we are talking about obviously being a global citizen. So I'm putting together my wife and I are putting together a summit at the end in November. It's called the Remote Business Summit. And if you want to go grab a free ticket, you can. It's www.remotebusinesssummit.com. And we basically have 25 experts who are talking about remote work, how to build remote companies, and these people who have been successful in doing that already. So that's something that might be of interest to anyone watching this.
All right. And that's all the time we got. Actually, it's past the time. I really appreciate it to Anfernee for doing that.
Thank you,
All
Calvin.
right. Okay. Thank you so much, Anfernee. All right. You have a good day, okay?
Okay, bye-bye.
Or is it? Yeah. Bye bye.